It was just supposed to be a routine morning, just another flight. The kind of thing Tyrone Jackson, CEO of Pinnacle Investments, was used to. But that day, at JFK Airport, things would take a turn. And not just any turn, a turn that would turn the tables in a way he could have never predicted. Tyrone had worked his entire life to get to this point. From growing up in a tough neighborhood in Harlem, watching his father run a small barber shop, to earning scholarships that took him all the way to MIT and Harvard Business School, Tyrone had climbed every rung of the corporate ladder. And once he'd reached the top, he didn't stop. He built Pinnacle into a global powerhouse, a success that people took notice of, both for his brains and his perseverance. But there was something Tyrone knew very well had to be twice as good to get half as far. That was the price of being a black man in America's corporate world. And he'd paid every cent. It wasn't just about the money or the prestige for him. It was about proving that excellence wasn't something that came with a specific color. It was something you earned. And that morning, Tyrone was set to acquire Sky Nation Airlines, a failing carrier that had the potential for greatness. But first, he booked himself a flight to Chicago on Sky Nation, wanting to experience it firsthand, to feel the experience that passengers did and see how it really was. Little did he know, this seemingly simple trip would change everything. Tyrone strode through the terminal at JFK, his custom-made suit catching the eyes of those around him. There was no denying it belonged there. But there was always that feeling, the looks, the whispers, the subtle tension in the air. Even after all the success, Tyrone had learned to navigate the silent assumptions about a black man in powerful spaces. And this was no different. As he made his way to the first-class counter, there was a slight chill in the air, a hesitancy that had become all too familiar to him. "Mr. Jackson, is it?" the flight attendant asked, her voice just a bit too sweet, a bit too forced. Tyrone nodded. "That's correct. First class to Chicago, flight SN 457. The woman, Miranda Whitley, glanced at the reservation on her screen, then back at him, her expression shifting just slightly. Tyrone caught a flicker of disbelief. It wasn't anything overt, just the way her eyes narrowed ever so slightly as she typed. "I'm showing some irregularity with your reservation," she said, her voice tinged with something Tyrone couldn't quite place. "Can I see the credit card used for the purchase?" Tyrone's stomach clenched, but he didn't flinch. This wasn't the first time. "The reservation was made through my company, Pinnacle Investments. Everything should be in order." He slid his platinum corporate card across the counter, his eyes meeting hers with a steady calm. Miranda looked at the card, then back at her screen, then back at the card, as if searching for something. "I'm sorry, but the system is flagging something. Let me get my supervisor." Tyrone's mind raced. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a glitch. This was something else. Something he had seen before, a pattern he had dealt with in countless other situations. Success, while black, where the disbelief wasn't just implied, it was built into the system. The unspoken rule that maybe, just maybe, a black man in a suit didn't belong in first class. As she walked off to find the supervisor, Tyrone's eyes scanned the room. He watched as other first-class passengers, mostly white, were processed without issue. They were waved through, smiles exchanged, no questions asked. But here he was, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, held up, scrutinized for reasons that had nothing to do with his ticket and everything to do with the color of his skin. Moments later, Gregory Pearson, the supervisor, arrived at the counter. He was middle-aged, dressed sharply, with a face that screamed corporate efficiency. But Tyrone saw through it. The man was here to manage a situation that had nothing to do with the airline's procedures. "Mr. Jackson," Gregory said with a practiced smile, "I understand there's some confusion with your reservation." "There shouldn't be," Tyrone replied coolly. "I have a first-class reservation to Chicago, flight SN 457. Gregory took a closer look at the reservation, tapping away at his tablet, But Tyrone could see the wheels turning in the Super VY-Soar's mind. This was going exactly as they had planned. Their eyes met, and Tyrone knew exactly what was going on. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't about overbooking or errors in the system. This was about something far more insidious. "I'm afraid we have to downgrade you," Gregory said after what seemed like an eternity. "First class is actually overbooked today. We'll need to reassign you to economy. But of course, we'll refund the fare difference." Tyrone raised an eyebrow, his voice even. "Overbooked? I understand your frustration," Gregory continued. "But these situations do happen from time to time. We can offer you an economy plus seat, with extra legroom." Tyrone wanted to snap, to demand his rightful seat, to make a scene, to expose the ridiculousness of it all. But he didn't. Instead, he did something far more dangerous. "Economy will be fine," he said, turning away with the kind of calm that sent a chill through the air. "I trust the refund will be processed promptly." As he made his way to the economy section of the plane, the familiar feeling of humiliation settled in his chest. He sat in his seat 23 band, looked out the window. Everything about this moment screamed injustice. But Tyrone wasn't here to be a VY Tim. He wasn't here to complain. He was here to build something better, to turn this humiliation into something bigger, something that would shake the foundation of this airline. And so he did. As he sat in that cramped economy seat, his phone buzzed with a message from his assistant, Amara. "The board is MOVYing up the timeline for Sky Nation. Everything is on track. Acquisition details are ready for execution." Perfect timing. Over the course of the flight, Tyrone turned this seemingly small moment into an opportunity to restructure not just the airline, but an entire industry. He connected with a CIVYL rights attorney sitting next to him, James Chun, who had witnessed the entire exchange. James confirmed what Tyrone had known all along: this wasn't just a one-off. This was systemic. This was corporate culture at its worst. As the plane soared through the sky, Tyrone's mind was already working, strategizing. The day he had been humiliated was the day he decided he would use this as leverage. The acquisition of Sky Nation wasn't just a business move, it was a chance to fix something broken. To make an airline that would treat everyone equally, no matter their race, no matter their status. As soon as the flight landed in Chicago, Tyrone made his move. He called a board meeting, invited the right people, and demanded change. He fired executives, implemented new policies, and brought in new leadership, including the very flight attendant, Shauna Williams, who had shown him kindness during the flight. She was appointed the new Chief Diversity Officer of Sky Nation, signaling a massive shift in company culture. But the fight wasn't over. Tyrone faced backlash: lawsuits from former executives, protests from disgruntled employees, and media attacks. But Tyrone stayed focused. His commitment to accountability didn't waver. He wasn't in this for the personal satisfaction of seeing people punished. He was in it for the long haul, because real change wasn't about indie VY dual VY Tories. It was about systemic transformation. By the time the media caught up with the story, Tyrone had already won. Sky Nation's rebranding as Ascend Airlines was complete. The airline's new motto, "Excellence is our only standard. Respect is our only currency," was proudly displayed in every terminal, and the changes were paying off. But Tyrone's greatest VY Tory came not in the form of headlines or stock prices, but in the stories he heard from passengers: Black travelers, Asian travelers, Hispanic travelers who shared how they'd finally been treated with the respect they deserved. Tyrone had turned his personal humiliation into a beacon of change, a statement that corporate America couldn't ignore. He had made a stand, not just for himself, but for the future. And now, as he looked out over the skyline of New York City, Tyrone knew the battle wasn't over. But the journey he had started was one that would inspire generations. Because change doesn't come from complaining. It comes from doing, from standing up and saying, "Enough." So let me ask you, what would you do if you were in Tyrone's shoes? Would you take action? Would you use your platform to change the system? Drop a comment below, and let's talk about what justice really means.